around here ever stands up and says, I've got a good idea and I don't need to spend money unwisely and inappropriately.
Correct.
You understand that, right?
I do.
Okay. Do you support the world becoming carbon neutral by 2050? Would that solve, do you support that?
I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, but if it were, do you support it?
Doesn't seem like it's a bad thing.
Okay. Do you support the United States becoming carbon neutral by 2050?
This may not be possible.
But do you support it?
If it were the right mix of power and energy in order to provide the electricity that's needed for essential needs.
Well, you do
Yes.
understand that that's the goal of the most ardent proponents of climate change, do you not?
I do understand.
Okay, did you just see that? Because I need a second. What you just watched was Senator John Kennedy doing what he does best. And if you're not familiar with him yet, you're in for a treat. I want to be upfront about where I stand before we watch the full thing. I think Kennedy just exposed something that happens way too often in Washington. People show up to Senate hearings sounding very important, using very big words, and at the end of the day saying absolutely nothing useful. This witness literally described himself on his own website as a visionary of the industry's future. A visionary. Kennedy found that, went to the website, did his homework. And when he actually tested that vision, nothing. The man had nothing. I have a lot of thoughts and I can't wait to break it all down. But first, if you're new here and you enjoy honest political commentary with a bit of humor, hit subscribe and drop a like. It helps the channel and you do not want to miss how this hearing ends. Alright, let's watch the full thing.
Thank you, Senator Merkley. Senator Kennedy's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Doe, as I understand your testimony, you're saying that at some point climate change is going to cause municipal bonds to default. Is that right?
No, I would say that they will be under pressure just because there'll be increased budgetary concerns.
Well,
So
can they withstand that pressure?
I think so.
Then
Yes.
what's the problem?
Problem is that there might be a higher interest rate if there are issues that aren't addressed by state and local governments, that if because of, let's just say, an anticipation of extreme weather events.
So
that
you're worried
waters-
that interest rates will go up?
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking on your website. You say, my quote, I'm quoting now, contribution to the municipal industry has been extensive as an analyst, strategist, and visionary of the industry's future, close quote. So I want to tap your visionary expertise. At what point do you think climate change is going to cause interest rates on municipal bonds to rise to the point that the interest rates will be prohibitive? When will all this happen?
Well, I'll dust my crystal ball off, but perhaps I think in 10 to 20 years.
10 to 20 years, okay. What do you think we ought to do about it?
I think we ought to be able to identify where infrastructure is most vulnerable to weather events, and that infrastructure is then, appropriate dollars are used to modernize infrastructure. For example, in the town of Marshfield,
I want to cut you off because I don't have
Sure.
much time. You think we ought to spend money?
wisely and appropriately.
Okay, sure. Well, nobody around here ever stands up and says, I've got a good idea and I don't need to spend money unwisely and inappropriately. You
Correct.
understand that, right?
I do.
Okay. Do you support the world becoming carbon neutral by 2050? Would that solve, do you support that?
I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, but if it were, do you support it?
Doesn't seem like it's a bad thing.
Okay. Do you support the United States becoming carbon neutral by 2050?
This may not be possible.
But do you support it?
If it were the right mix of power and energy in order to provide the electricity that's needed for essential needs.
Well, you do
Yes.
understand that that's the goal of the most ardent proponents of climate change, do you not?
I do understand that.
Okay. How much will that cost?
I couldn't give a figure to that because it's outside my area of expertise on that.
You think we ought to just start spending money without an understanding of how much it's going to cost?
I don't think that's ever wise.
Okay. Well, don't you think we ought to look into how much it's going to cost?
Again, that's around that area. That's not an area of expertise. I'm really focused on addressing the updating of infrastructure for our state and local governments.
You don't seem to have very many solutions. Except what I take away from your testimony is that climate change is going to cause interest rates to rise on municipal bonds, so at some point the cost will become prohibitive, and we need to spend money on infrastructure to stop it. Where do you think this money should come from?
I think state and local governments have the capacity to borrow because the rates are significantly low, and there's an opportunity now to do so and be proactive.
So you think state and local governments ought to borrow the money?
I do. I think they have the capacity to do so.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of car do you drive?
I drive a Jeep Wagoneer.
Is it gas or electric?
It's gas.
Okay. Do you have a gas stove?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have a heat pump?
I do not.
You don't?
I do not.
Oh, okay. How big a house do you live in?
I live in a condominium of 853 square feet.
Okay. I'm over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're back. We just watched the whole thing, and honestly, even knowing what was coming, it still landed. Let me tell you exactly why I think Kennedy was right here, and why this exchange matters beyond just being funny. The visionary thing. Kennedy going straight to that man's own website and quoting it back to him was brilliant. If you're going to sit before the United States Senate and tell lawmakers how to handle a multi-trillion-dollar issue, you need to back that title up. And when Kennedy pressed him, the vision just evaporated. You cannot call yourself a visionary and then answer every hard question with "that's outside my area of expertise." Pick one. The timeline. When Kennedy asked when exactly climate change would push municipal bond rates to prohibitive levels, the answer was 10 to 20 years. Maybe that's fair, maybe it isn't. But Kennedy's point was sharper than that. If your whole argument is built on something happening in 10 to 20 years, and you can't tell us what it will cost or lay out a specific plan, then what exactly are we doing here today? The cost question. This is the big one for me. Kennedy asked a completely reasonable question. How much will it cost for the U.S. to become carbon neutral by 2050? The witness said he couldn't give a figure because it was outside his area of expertise. Outside his area of expertise. This man came to Congress to ask them to spend money without knowing how much. That is not vision. That is just a vibe. And you cannot run a government on vibes. The borrowing idea. When the witness finally offered something concrete, that state and local governments should borrow money now while rates are low, it actually raised more questions. You're telling me the solution to rising interest rates is to take on more debt right now? Kennedy didn't even need to push back hard because the witness had already done enough damage to himself. The gas Jeep. I know some people will say this was a cheap shot. I actually think it was a fair closing move. If you're warning lawmakers about climate urgency and pushing for billions in public spending, your own lifestyle is a reasonable data point. He has a gas Jeep, a gas stove, no heat pump. The man isn't even convinced enough to change his own household. So here's where I land on all of this. Kennedy is often underestimated because he delivers these moments with this slow, calm, almost casual style. People laugh and sometimes miss how precise the questioning actually is. But watch it again, and every single question was deliberate. He was building a case that this witness was long on alarm and short on answers. And that matters because Congress is not just a place for raising awareness. It is a place for real decisions with real consequences. If the experts being brought in cannot answer basic questions like how much does this cost and when exactly will this happen, then we have a serious problem. Kennedy did not deny climate change in this exchange. He did not say infrastructure doesn't matter. What he said between every line was show your work. And I think that is completely fair. Let me know in the comments whether you think Kennedy was fair or went too hard on the witness. Share this with someone who enjoys sharp political commentary, and I'll see you in the next one.